What is up, my homies? Here we go. Round 2. Topic is in investigating the execution and monitoring of human movements. Now, something I like to cover has to do with weights because weights and gains are bae. So, what are newbie gains?
What are newbie gains?
I don't know what newbie gains are, so I went searching. So a lot of times we can apply this to something like PT or OT, even with sports and coaching, but I'm going to use the atmosphere of a gym because I love the gym. Yeah! So let's get into it. Have you ever wondered why your first year of lifting with strength and growth is of the equivalency to your first year on earth as a newborn? Every time anyone ever picks up the weights for the first time, they instantly see positive and extreme changes in their strength and size, given that they're, eating a sufficient amount of protein and adequate number of calories. Take a bench max, for example. For a male, a realistic example would be someone who has a first bench max of 135 pounds, so you got a bar with 45-pound plate on each side. With a good coach or trainer, this newbie could easily see an inch or 2 or 3 of growth in their arms and chest circumference within the first year, as well as a bench number in the mid to upper 200-pound range. This is a strength gain in one movement of at least 100 pounds. You know what I would do to get 100 pounds of bench like that? We're not going to put it on camera. I like to simplify this and call it movement execution by the application of maximum effort, as quoted by my favorite comic character, Mr. Deadpool. Why is it that this person that has never previously been in the gym before getting all the goods? We as athletes and fitness enthusiasts would give a leg to see those kinds of gains in a year. The truth is, we probably already did. We just don't remember because we have been through this journey for so long. What is it exactly that makes a person so adaptive and transformational during their novice phase of training and fitness? It's super simple. 3, 2, 1. Neuromuscular. I can't freaking say it. Neuromuscular mechanisms of movement execution. Simple. Super easy. Our muscles are not just this blodge of matter sitting cozy within our skin that changes shape. We're way more complicated than that and complex, which is a good thing. It's awesome. Without going into crazy anatomy, let's keep it simple. Our skeletal muscle is made of thousands and thousands of these things called motor units. Now, what is a motor unit? A motor unit is comprised of two things, and these two things are key influencers of muscular adaptation, manipulation, activation, and growth. This is the muscle cell and the nerve cell, also called a neuron. I believe that we can safely consider these two cells to be the main components, or the yin and yang, of all neuromuscular mechanics. In other words, the one cannot function without the other. We have these things called innervation ratios in our muscles between our different types of muscle cells. We have multiple muscle cell types, whether they're slow twitch, fast twitch, really fast twitch, and every single muscle cell is integrated within a specific neuron. The neuron tells the muscle how much to contract or what type of contraction to partake. So to make it easier to understand, we could say that a muscle acts as the car or the vehicle, but the neuron is the driver within that controls the car. I believe there's a misassumption made here, and that is the mistake to thinking that initial gains are muscular gains or size gains rather than neuromuscular gains. The key expression here is neuro. Now, don't get me wrong, as you lift, doesn't matter, you rip your muscle, it's going to grow back bigger. But we're talking about on a microbiological level and a cellular level here to what is kind of taking over at first. It is the neurons learning how to be controlled and demanded by the brain and the spinal cord, so our central nervous system, to send the correct action potential down, through, and out of the spinal cord to the corresponding muscles needed for the movement that is actually occurring. Kind of a mouthful, I know. So what I kind of want to put in here is at least my take on the difference between exercise and training. Exercise is training without a purpose, while training is exercise with a purpose. They go hand in hand. You have muscle fiber groupings that are aligned to specific neurons from the spinal cord, and from the brain comes motor command. So in other words, a command to your muscles. through your nerve. When the body is not used to taxing movements and heavy weight, then all of a sudden this person starts a heavy weightlifting and strength regime, then they're in for a present from their body, and that is gains. Gains and more gains. This is because our bodies are extremely adaptive. Yes, the thing that keeps us from continuously and always getting stronger and always getting bigger, anatomical adaptability, is initially the thing that gives a newbie their gain. Our bodies continuously get feedback from our senses that tells us what is going on around us. And as time goes on, our perceptions can change, especially as we adapt. When the newbie goes to the bench press for the first time, their perception of 100 pounds is going to be completely different the first time in comparison with how it will feel after 2 or 3, 4, even 5 months of strength gain. By acknowledging that our sensory or afferent feedback is directly correlated with our motor or efferent commands, this allows us to see and understand why this person experiences faster initial strength gains in this one movement. So let me try to make this clear. It is not so much as strength gains that the person is experiencing before their first initial plateau, but it is them continuously getting feedback from their senses of perceived weight, along with super key factors like muscular coordination, synchronization, neuromechanical training, and proprioceptive training. So in other words, the initial gains aren't actual gains of strength so much as learning to maximize the neuromuscular coordination that they already had potential access to. And this comes with training. This is why, in my opinion, training variation in angles, intensity, and specificity is super key in maximizing strength and hypertrophic gains over time, especially for those of us who are seasoned and have been doing this for so long. We have to work so much harder to get the same return on our investment because our bodies are so adaptive. Okay, so the golden question, part number 2 of challenge number 2, and that is, what are methods that we can do as seasoned athletes who train in order to get newbie-like gains? Well, thank you for asking, Dave. There are multiple ways that we can do this, and it's all about getting like this, basically like this central nervous system reset. One method or tip for newbie-like strength gains for those of us who are seasoned or have been at it for a long time is sensory overload. Now, this is a method that a lot of people use, but I also feel that many people aren't aware of it. An example of sensory overload can be used in a situation prior to something like a heavy compound set. We can take bench for an example since we were already talking about it. Now, an example of using sensory overload for bench press is say we were going to do heavy doubles where you take the bar off the rack and you do 2 reps and you rest. And you take plenty of time in between because these are power movements, so we're taking more time. Well, an example for something like this, whenever you want to perceive the weight as less instead of more, even though it's the same, is before your set, what you do is you put on a lot of weight. And what you do is you have a spotter, and the spotter helps you take it off the rack. So for an example, if I wanted to do 315 for 2, instead of me taking 315 off the rack and doing my 2, prior to it, I would put on 4 plates, which would be 405. And so what I would do is I would have my spotter help me come off the bench, and I would hold 405 up for 4 or 5 seconds and then re-rack it. Now what just happened? What just happened to me? Well, I took the bar off the rack, and now I have the perception that the weight on the rack is stupid heavy. So next time I take that plate off and I go for my set of 2, 3 plates feels a lot lighter than it would have if I went from 2 plates to 3 plates rather than 4 plates to 3 plates. Another example to get some newbie-like gains in a short amount of time is probably the opposite of what you would think, and that is to take a break. You have to let the body recover. You see, when you're training all the time, you're doing all this damage to your muscles, and we don't always recover optimally. Perhaps have a day to week-long refeed without training. What this can do is to allow your body to fully recover, and then that way you can perform more optimally the week or 2 after your break. And then through that, when you perform better, you receive more gains. One more example of how we can experience some newbie-like gains is a little bit long-term compared to taking a day or week break, and that is controlled overreaching. Basically, what overreaching means is controlled overtraining. And what this does, it allows your body to get taxed to where it has to forcibly speed itself up in order to recover and to optimize its cellular capacities. So an example of this would be to controllably overtrain for a month, which we call overreaching, where we're taxing our bodies. We don't necessarily go up in weight. We might even go down, not because we want to, but because we're forced to. We're so taxed from the training session prior with that muscle group that we have to go down to avoid injury. But an example of this is now we're done with this month and you take a week off. And during that week, what happens is your body gets to recover. And because you just forcibly overtrain for a short amount of time, you increase the nuclei in your muscle cells by a lot, actually. There are some great studies on that. And what happens is after this week or 2 long break, you experience crazy strength gains, up to 10% increase in maxes and crazy stamina, crazy pumps, everything, because you've increased the amount of nuclei in your muscle cells. And along with that, you have the action potentials being sent from your brain through your neurons to your muscle now that are higher because you've been forcing extra workloads, extra weight, extra tension and everything, so your body's trying to catch up. Now that it's recovered, it can catch up. Another tip for people out there who are seasoned in training, when we're talking about sensory feedback and motor commands, we do have, to an extent, a sense of control over our senses. And what I mean by this is maybe we can have present adherence to what's going on, to what's coming in from outside. And whenever we're paying attention to what's going in, we can train ourselves on what we filter in and what we filter out. So what I mean by this is take somebody who wants to increase their bench. Look, I'm going to be straight up honest with you. To increase your bench, you must bench. There's no way around it. To increase your bench, you do more push-ups. No, that's not specific to a bench press. To increase your bench, you increase your bench. Same goes with things like pull-ups, push-ups, deadlifts, squat, and etc. I want to give you a quote excerpt from Christopher Smith of TNation.com. This is from 2012. He says, "Think about it. Which do you think is more likely to make you stronger? 52 sessions on the bench a year or 104 sessions? Strength is, after all, a skill, and practice makes perfect. High-frequency training is especially beneficial for raw lifters who need to hone and perfect their technique on the actual lift. And more often than not, better technique will be the difference between a big PR and another frustrating failed attempt. This applies to everybody. Training more frequently also has other benefits, the biggest being that it increases neurological efficiency. This goes right into what I was saying earlier. He says that this is a fancy way of saying it teaches your body to use its muscles more effectively. Something I'd like to tack on at the end of this before we wrap this up is that there are other drives for increased effort execution, and this can be an overdrive or overflow of motivation that could block inhibitory sensory feedback. I'm going to give you an example. This might be something else that helps somebody who might be stuck or plateaued in their regime, and that is this. Hypothetical situation, because I'm a big fan of these. Let's say that you had a bench of 135 pounds. You thought you were stuck there, and I said to you, hey, I just kidnapped your mom, and I'm holding her hostage. Now, I'm going to hold her hostage for a month, and by the end of that month, so 30 days from now, if your bench press is not 225 pounds, which is 2 plates, I'm going to kill your mom. What do? Are you going to bench twice a week at 75% effort, like 95% of people out there do? Are you going to bench press every single day? This is an example of where we can have an influx or overflow of motivation, which can be in our favor hormonally in blocking the inhibitory sensory feedback that might block how we feel about our drive towards increasing that bench press. Now, I know that was a crazy, crappy situation, but think about it. If that were to happen and I were to put myself in that situation, I'd probably be benching every day. So how is it that you would like to use your efferent and afferent system to increase your bench press? Anyways, guys, hope this was a good video. I try to keep it short, but it probably won't end up being short. That's okay. Learned a lot doing this, and I really enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed it as well, and I'll see you in the next one.